And we are live. JT here. Welcome to the huddle. The huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are tuning in live as we stream into our Facebook community, whether you are watching the replay on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focused on the here and the now. And I guarantee you that if you do that, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. Well, for any of you that have been following the huddle, he's been a guest on here before. And, you know, we were sort of inspired by a conversation we had earlier this week. So we wanted to spice things up. You know, variety is the spice of life. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. My guest in the huddle today is a great friend. You know, he's we consider each other family, but he's currently on top of that serving as a coach at Queen's University in Kingston. My guest in the huddle today is Travis Dezan. How are you today, brother?
What's up, JT? I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me again. This is pretty good stuff, and I'm very enthused to see where this conversation goes today.
Yeah, definitely. Now, before we get kicked off, I really want to take a moment to count my blessings. And as you know, as we've talked about, counting your blessings is a daily practice for me. Some days I do it better than others. I do find the days where I do count my blessings more often are typically days are bigger, more beautiful, brighter. So I'm a firm believer that the biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So I just want to thank you again for blessing me and our community with some of your time and energy.
Hey, man, my pleasure. Absolutely.
So, it's interesting, this conversation in the huddle today was birthed from a conversation we had earlier this week. And it was interesting how the whole premise started when I reached out to you yesterday with an inspired idea. And I said, hey, what do you think about this? And you, being the quick and prompt decision maker, said, absolutely, I'm all in. So it sort of revolved around this idea of decision making. And I know from our conversation, we thought, hey, what a great opportunity to switch it up. You said, hey, let me take the driver's seat and then sort of go from there. And let's just have a conversation around this idea of decision making and how it really is a cheat code in the game of life. So I'll kick it over to you, brother, and let's see where the conversation flows.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So it's funny that you use the word driver's seat. That's like one of my favorite things to say right now, because there's a lot of people now that really live in the passenger seat that aren't really steering the direction they want to go to. Right. So they're pretty much being that person that's relying on someone else to make the decision for them. Right. So when this opportunity came up, I was just like, hey, let me take the driver's seat. JT, you can sit in the passenger seat for this one. And just see what the conversation goes. And the inspiration was beside the word decision, and the power of the word decision. And, there's different ways to view it. There's different ways to go about it. And I really want to attack the categories that maybe might inspire someone to start sitting in the driver's seat more often and really push them forward to the next level in their life. So I guess I'm curious to know, to you as a person and the success that you've had in your life, um, the word decision comes a lot of power and it comes a lot of responsibility. What would you say is a common trait of someone with success with their decision making?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Travi, and I love the analogy that you shared there. Right, it's because it's hopping into the driver's seat of your life. Right, you're driving. You know, we all have this power to drive this Ferrari, this Lambo, this Bugatti, right? And it's our responsibility to really grab, you know, sit in that driver's seat and buckle up and let's go. For me, it always goes back to maybe it's our background as high quality athletes and coaches, but I firmly believe, okay, let's study. It's not about copying what successful people do, but studying how they think. So my whole thing would be, I would go back to what I considered is one of my, Bibles, one of my playbooks, and that's Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill. And for those who haven't heard of it, I know many of our listeners have heard about it. I know people always reference, what's a book I could start with? And I often talk about Think and Grow Rich. Now, for those who don't know, it's interesting, right? Again, right here. Think and Grow Rich was written in 1937, right? Napoleon Hill released it. And it was essentially written after he studied 25,000 people, right? So right there, you think of the sample size there. And then within the book, he wrote a whole chapter on the power of decision making. And he studied, 500 of the most successful people. Like what was the common denominator between them? And he talked about this idea that successful people make quick and prompt decisions, and they rarely change their mind, if at all. So when they go all in, they're all in. They literally burn the boats. Where unsuccessful people or people that had never achieved their goals are indecisive, that they like to hum and haw. They like to, should I or shouldn't I? They play that sort of debilitating game, and they paralyze themselves into inaction. So again, we just have to study the best practices of the world's most successful people and really understand that your ability to make quick and prompt decisions and to get away from this idea of I'll think about it is really the key to unlocking your greatness and to giving yourself the power right back.
Yeah, like you said, it's very common where you can kind of see people's success. You look at all the people that, may have the things that you want right now. They're all making decisions quick. They're all making decisions right now. And a lot of decisions that they're making is a lot of pressure behind them, right? So with pressure and quick decision making, you're not always going to succeed with it, right? You might fail, right? And to me, failure is important, right? Failure really pushes you. If you do not fail in life, are you really improving? Are you really getting better? Are you really reaching those goals that you want to hit? Right. So I guess the next question is, JT, is, let's just say you made a big decision and that decision was not easy. And you go all in and then you hit a brick wall, bang. Mm-hmm. And to some people that's failing, right? Now the next opportunity comes up and then you go back, you look, man, I made this decision before and I failed miserably. How important is it to really look at it in a different way that, hey, maybe it's good that I failed and now I've improved and learned? How important is to kind of view those things?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Travi. And, a couple things there that you shared there. You brought up this idea of like facts versus stories, right? And a fact is you may not have been successful yet, right? Maybe you applied for a job and you didn't get it. That's fact. Where I find, I think from my own experience, working with high quality coaching clients such as yourself, is this idea of what gets people into trouble is this idea of like they quote unquote fail, they're not successful right now, and then they create a story. Oh, I didn't get the job because I'm never lucky, right? I always take one step forward, two steps back, right? Or and they come up with a story that, again, it's not good or bad, but the question I'd ask you is that story actually helping you move forward, right? So again, it's distinguishing this idea between fact and stories, right? So again, successful people, they understand they can write the story moving forward. So I'll share with you a story, but again, to highlight this idea of like, you always get to determine, am I going to get stuck here or am I going to move forward? So during my last year of coaching high school football, we were in a tight city final in the public league, right? It was like 1-1. Actually, at that time, we were down 8-1. And I had this rule that I live by, that if our offense, and I did not call the offense, right? That was Coach Samley's. Anytime our offense was 3rd and 4, I always gave coach the green light. He would always ask me, what am I doing? And that season was anytime we're 3rd and 4 or less, go, right? Just run the play, right? And I'm not sure why I sort of came to that decision, that clear, that's just the rule. Interestingly enough, in hindsight, I was reading that book this season on the power of decision making. So fast forward, it's in the game, and we ran it 3rd and 4, 5-6 times in the game. And for a variety of reasons, facts, we were not successful. Sometimes the defense made a play. Sometimes, let's just say the spot was interesting of the ball, right? And it was interesting that we just kept on going to that well. Yeah, we were stopped 5 or 6 times consecutively, but it was interesting that as the game went on, as it went into the dying minutes of the game, that calm and confidence to keep saying, just go for it. Boom, sprung another first down, and ultimately led to us scoring 2 touchdowns and going ahead and winning that public championship. So why I share that with you is, if I would have allowed the first failure to hold me back, where would we have been? If I would have allowed the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th to go, would we have been successful? I don't know. But it was interesting that just having that common confidence in myself, that I'm going to trust my gut here. This 3rd and 4 rule has served us well all year. It's going to lead to great places. Thus allowed me to have common confidence in myself to make a decision, which then empowered our other coaches to have common confidence in themselves and to keep calling the same play. The truth is, we kept calling the same play. And then that gave common confidence for the athletes that we were blessed to help and serve that year to make the play. So it just really helped me to understand that when you have the common confidence to trust yourself that, yeah, I got this, to make a decision, to not allow past quote unquote failures to hold you back, that's where it goes. And it's interesting. I still remember having a former coach that I looked up to ask me, why did you keep going for it? And I remember saying to him, turned out okay, didn't it? And he just laughed and smiled and just realized that, again, persistence is a superpower as well.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting couple of things with, being calm and being confident. And, you at the time being the head coach there and you're the leader, everyone's looking for you to make that quick decision. And if you had to think about it for a second and was standing there going like, I'm not sure what we're going to do, is that really going to give the players the common confidence to go execute that play that you might have called? Right. So when you just make that quick decision and the guys see that's like, yeah, he's confident we're going to make this play, we're going to make it. regardless of the situation that happened in the past. It's right now. We're going to give their best right now, and we're really going to push to get that first down. And because of that, because you projected that positive and calm kind of energy, they went out there and executed the play. And it's very important to have that trait when you're leading someone, right? So we're going to backtrack a little bit, and we know that that decision wasn't just at that point in time. You decided when you woke up that you're going to be going for it on 3rd and 4th. You decided when you woke up, right? So how important is it from when you rest to when you wake up that you make a committed decision right away? And, to give some context, like for example, like when I first wake up, my committed decision is I'm going to have a glass of water and I'm going to study myself, right? Whereas I feel like people that are struggling right now, their committed decision is they're going to pick up their phone and they're going to scroll through social media. They're going to scroll through Twitter, whatever it may be, and they're going to get all that negativity that's going to be from the outside is going to come inside you now. How important is it to make a committed decision when you first wake up to really value work to yourself?
Yeah, no, so many great things there, Travi, as you share that. A couple of things pop up as you go there. One, what I heard you talk about this idea was you've made a decision that the first thing you do when you wake up is you invest time and energy into your greatest resource, which is yourself, right? Even that simple practice of I'm going to fuel my body. I'm going to hydrate my body with water so that it has what it needs from a hydration standpoint, which then allows me to optimize my performance, right? Like even just that simple practice right there, you are investing into yourself. From my experience, where we get into trouble, where people get into trouble. And again, I say this from my own lived experience. And again, working with other high quality people like as yourself, is this idea of successful people don't negotiate with themselves, right? Like unsuccessful people or people that are struggling. And again, if you're struggling right now, just it's like, well, they're playing the should I or shouldn't I get, taking your reference. Oh, should I get some water? Should I not? Should I drink the water? Should I not? Should I eat this cake? Should I not eat this cake? And that game is like, it's almost like you're playing this mental game of tennis and ping pong, where again, should I, shouldn't I? Should I, shouldn't I? And that's draining. That drains you of unnecessary time and energy and resources, right? From your greatest resource, which is yourself. So the one piece of wisdom I would share is stop negotiating with yourself. And what I would say is keep promises you make to yourself. Because even again, going back to you, going through that simple practice of, hey, the first thing I do in the morning is I drink water. I hydrate, I optimize my performance. Right there, every time you do that, essentially what you're training and conditioning your mind to do is understanding that when Travi says he's going to do something, he does it. He follows through on his word. He keeps his word to himself. And when you do that, you build your trust muscle. And really, that's one of the differentiators between successful and unsuccessful people is they trust themselves, right? And it's a higher conscious faculty, right? It's a mental muscle. It's your intuition. It's your gut. And it's amazing what power you can have in your life when you have the ability to say, here's what I'm going to do, to give myself a command and to flip and do it.
Absolutely. So it's good that you bring that up in terms of, the power of your words and, choose them wisely in a way. And it's interesting with me too, is if, like you said, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And it's not going to be any questions. There's not going to be any moments of I feel bad for myself. If I tell you that I'm going to do something, it's going to happen. And that's something that I personally take deep pride on, right? So, and it's not just because I don't want to let people down. It's because if I say something, it's because I made a committed decision that moment in time that I will be at the certain spot I need to be, say the certain things I need to say, and I'm going to be making sure that I'm leaving someone in that situation better in a more positive way that's going to affect them, not just right now, but maybe long term, hopefully. And I think that's very important to have is, do not go against your word. And the reason why I say that's because, like I said, the reason why you thought of that word, for example, the reason why you thought about the situation and what you want to do had some purpose behind it. And you may not know what the purpose is right now, but in the future, you're going to say, wow, I'm really happy that I stuck with it. And that's definitely a great tool to know and great, trait to have, especially again when you're leading someone, right? So, we've had talks about failure. We've had talks about decision making. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into something with our thoughts, and the way that we think. Because at the end of the day, again, when you wake up in the morning, you're deciding how you're going to think. There's a lot of people, and still to this day to myself, where you have a lot of self-talk, and you may be someone that's saying great things about yourself, or you may be someone that's thinking like you're not doing so great right now. And again, I want to go back to the words of choose your words wisely. And to me, choosing my words is I always say things that are going to be of service to me. That's not going to, allow the outside world come inside of me, because I want to make sure that the words that I'm saying to myself are going to help me throughout the day or throughout my life. Right. So how important is it to, thoughts become things, right? So how important is it to really choose your words wisely?
Yeah. Well, it's everything, right? And it's interesting. You talked about like we become what we think about. And it's interesting that some people, I've heard that before, but what does that all mean? And the interesting thing is, if you take a look and you study what most great leaders believe, right? They haven't agreed on much, right? They have diversity of thought, but most great leaders agreed, like we become what we think about. So it's understanding that really at the end of the day, the only thing you ultimately control is the ability to choose your next thought. Many people have been led to believe that, there's free will to act. But understand that the action that you have made up to this point, like you said, is based on a thought. So like you were sharing, if I only have the ability to choose my next thought, if I want to be great, I better have a great thought. And it's interesting, like you said, most people can choose great thoughts when they perceive things are going well in their life, right? Giving you a sports, right? It's easy to think great about yourself when you're up by 5. Or it's easy from a finance perspective to think great about your finances when your bank account is where you think it should be. Or it's great to think you're a great spouse or significant other when your relationship is like you're on date night and it's going well and it's amazing. The real separator between successful and unsuccessful people is this, like, what are your thoughts when you're down by 5? What are your thoughts when your bank account is sitting at 0 or close to that? Or where do your thoughts go when you get in a fight with your significant other, your spouse? And that's where the work, like you said, it comes from disciplining, from conditioning and training your mind to see that whatever has happened up to this point, I get to choose my next thought. And that next thought is going to determine what happens moving forward. And as we've talked about before on our coaching calls, is this idea of great thoughts are like a train. So when I choose a great thought, it's like a car and a train. Then it becomes easier to choose a next great thought, a next great thought, a next great thought, a next great thought, a next great thought. And pretty soon what you start to realize is that when you choose great thought consistently and you challenge yourself to do it, and it's not always easy, right? We all have our moments. That what happens is you notice your vibration, your frequency, your energy shift, and you just feel different. You're more energized, you're more enthused. And that is why, people often talk about gratitude, feeling blessed. That's the power of being grateful, of feeling blessed, of truly loving everything that has happened up to this point, and just sort of being that unconditional love of every experience that has happened up to this point.
Amazing. The biggest thing, well, there's a lot of things I picked up from that, but one of the biggest things was training your mind. And I view it in a unique way where, like, if I was training for a sport, so say if I was training for the NFL or CFL combine right now, I will be training every single day on my craft to make sure I'm prepared to play. Right. And the mind is the same idea. Is it's non-negotiable that you need to train your mind every single day to have the habits that you want. Mm-hmm. And through consistency of training your mind is going to do wonders for you. And I look at it in the past as, I can only imagine where I would be right now if I had the tools back then, right? I have them now, which is amazing for me. What's going to allow me and my family to grow at a higher pace than the average, to say. What are some tools? What are some ways that may help someone that's listen to us right now? I know I have my tools. I know what I do, but I'm curious to see, like, what are some habits that you have every single day that's training your mind?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And as you shared that, I want to remind everyone that your body, your physical body, is an instrument of your mind. So whatever is going on, if we want to say that mind's in every cell of the body, but whatever is happening in your mind is going to come through the body into your physical world, right? It's ultimately going to determine what results you have. So again, it goes back to this idea of, are you willing to put in the time and the energy to actually train your mind, right? And again, putting it through the uncomfortable reps and sets to train it, to discipline it, to make it stronger, more powerful, right? And for me, it's looked different throughout my journey. For me, when I first started, and you remember back to, when I went to the hospital in 2016 on Mother's Day, right? I mean, I was in, recovery for months. And for me, it started with this idea of, like, simply reading more, right? I realized I got a glimpse of what I didn't want in my life, which then on the flip side of things, it did allow me to, like, what do I want? And what I realized was there was a gap. I needed to create a different environment around me. So I started reading more. I still remember the first book I read was Pete Carroll's book on Win Every Day, or it was something around this idea of how, he had taken his quote unquote failures in the professional coaching ranks through to USC, to where it was at the Seahawks. I remember just reading it, just started like piquing my curiosity. Like, ooh, like this feels good. This feels different. Then I started integrating some podcasts, right? And I just started surrounding my environment with just different thinkers, right? Than just this, what people typically talk about, like, and then for me, it became this practice of, okay, when I was physically healed and able to move, I started moving my body. Because for me, as a high quality athlete, physical movement has always been something I understood. It was an area I felt calm and confident in. So it just made sense to me. I'm going to move my body every morning. Before I was getting up earlier, I was getting up at like, a couple hours before work and physically putting myself through a workout, listening to podcasts. So I started stacking them, right? The learning. I started moving my body because it made me feel good. And we all know when you move, it's just energy and motion. It rises, right? It's just, and from there, just started listening more. For me, that practice looks different now. The first thing I do every morning is I do my meditation for 20 minutes. I just find for me, that allows me to cool the jets. Like I'm an energetic guy. I'm enthusiastic. I like to get after it. You know me, right? Like my learned behavior is like, let's get up, let's go, let's get after it. I can quickly find myself into the hustle and grind of life. So I have this practice, this ritual to cool the jets, to center me. So it's the 20 minutes of meditation, and then I get into my daily study. It's the reading, it's the writing, it's the organizing my thoughts. And that allows me to create a game plan. And then when the day starts, when Alicia and the kids are up, when I'm working with my coaching clients, when I'm at an event for, with Football Ontario, it's like, I'm ready to go. I'm all in, baby.
All in is right, man. So you can kind of see that, you've created this habit of, having a ritual and being consistent with it. And it's not just a routine, it's rituals, because it helps you lead throughout your whole day, or the week or the month or the year. And if you were someone that, did that off and on, sometimes that you wouldn't be where you are right now because of it. But since you've been so consistent and you persevered through, some tough times, and everyone goes through tough times. If you're not going through a tough time, it's going to happen eventually. But since you've trained your mind so well, same with myself, is that whenever a tough situation happens, you feel like you're able to attack it pretty easily. And I forget where I heard it. I don't know where I heard it. I think I was just scrolling on social media at one point for a little bit, and it was a reference between, a wild cow and a wild buffalo. Forget where I heard it. And what it was, maybe I heard it from you. Maybe it was from you. Who knows? And what it was is when a cow senses something going bad in the wild, to say they like to run. Big storms coming, they run. Yeah. They run as far as you can, which and the end note, it prolongs them in that tough situation. Whereas a buffalo, he attacks that storm head on. The reason why they attack the storm head on, because they might have to deal with something tough for a little bit of time, but they're able to escape that toughness faster because they're running through that storm. They're running through that brick wall. So once you get to the other side, life is what they want. Right? Yeah. Did I hear that from you? I don't know where I heard it from, but I definitely heard the analogy from somewhere. I think that was a great one. It definitely inspired me.
Well, we've actually heard that in the huddle twice from two of our friends. Coach Tom Annett from Cora shared that one. He talked about when he was on the podcast a couple of years ago, he talked about, hey, have you read the book, The Twin Thieves? And he talked about this idea of, when buffaloes sense a storm, they run towards it, right? And they attack it head on. And I know that'll resonate with you because I know a big mantra of you guys at Queens is this attack and finish. And they run through it and they actually lessen their time in the storm, where the cows actually run away. And what they do is they prolong it, right? So it's that idea of they run towards what is making them feel scared, the fear. And on the other side of that is actually their freedom, right? It's like, again, for any of our football players or hockey players or rugby players that are listening to this, right? You got one of two things. You got the ball, you got one of two things. You see someone that's bigger, stronger, faster coming towards you, you got one of two choices to make. One, I could stop my feet, run backwards, run out of bounds. That's the easy thing to do. Or two, I can, again, pick up speed, pump the knees, lower the shoulder, and drop it. And then by doing that, that is the only way that I'm going to get towards the end zone. Right. So that was there. And then our friend Derek Grant also shared that when we were talking about this idea of clarity and what holds people back, that fear. So we've talked about it a couple of times, and it's interesting that it was shared by two people who I think you and I would both agree are living very successful lives.
Yeah. And I think it's a great analogy, and it's definitely an inspirational way to view things. And, I never listened to it on a car ride driving. I just don't remember where it was from. And it kind of shows how interesting it came from this, which is good.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorites. And another one of my favorite things to say is, and if it's in my IG bio, is, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
And, what I personally mean by that is that, if you wake up a certain way and you're unhappy, whatever it may be, or your day is not the way that you want it to go, but you keep doing that same thing over and over and over, and you do not change your habits, well, nothing's going to change, because nothing is changing with how you're doing things, how you're living your daily life, how you're projecting yourself in the public, whatever it may be. So the thing that I love saying, and I said it to the receiver group. I remember the one day where Coach Kwame, he had me sit in the middle, and this was new to me. I didn't know what's going on. They tried me sit in the middle right here, and then everyone just surrounded me in a big circle, and then they just bombarded me with questions. And I was just like, this is amazing, because it's allowing them to learn about me outside of just being a football coach. Who am I as a person? The first question was Travis, who are you? And right away, I'm just like, okay, this is great, because I said, well, I'm a father. I'm a pretty spiritual human being. I consider myself that. I'm someone who inspires to make change every single day, so on and so forth. And another question was like, what is your favorite quote? And I told them, like, well, it's my IG bio, man. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And I had to explain to them what it meant, and to see their eyes open and kind of really think about the moment and have them live in the present tense and saying, like, man, what coach just said really inspired me to make change in my life and the way I view things, the way that I say things. And, with us, the Queens, we obviously had some great success. We know that. And there's a couple guys I want to reference. I'm not going to say their names, but we have some smaller receivers that their task is do a pretty big job. Like, we do a lot of things where we, add in a slot receiver, and he has to block a 270-pound defensive end. And because of their intact and finished mindset and the way that we go along things with our Queens, is they're able to win those battles. And it's not because they're small. They're winning those battles because they made up in their mind. They made a decision right there and then that they're going to attack that like a buffalo, attack the storm, and they're going to do their absolute best to run through that. And I could tell you there's been times where a little 5'9", 175-pound slot receiver is winning that battle. Yeah. And that's just because the way that we train their mind, the way that we train their bodies, is a little bit better, let's just say. Mm-hmm. And the habits that they get from just those little things, like what Coach Kwame does, what myself does, is, it's pretty inspiring to keep doing those things with these guys.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? As you share that, right? I think one of the blessings, with your Queens coaching staff is this idea of, like, you got not only great football coaches, but you have, great husbands and dads and great men, right? Like, it's more about, football is just kind of the vehicle to teach these greater life lessons. And it's interesting. I mean, I've been able to kind of, get a peek behind the curtain, and, some people, I remember speaking with Coach Snyder before, coming out of the pandemic. And, it was interesting that in terms of wins and losses, it was not successful, but how quickly that changed once after COVID. And part of it is because of the mentality that's around this program, right? Like attack and finish, the buck a brick, right? And this humble sort of like this sort of like blue collar mentality that it's just like, it's a simple message. it's consistent. It's just day after day, rep after rep, set after set, practice after practice. That's ultimately what's taken, you guys to like this quantum leap, right? In a relatively short time.
Yeah, it's football is it's really relatable to life. It's truly what you're going to get from life and what you're going to get from football is what you put into it, right? So if you're consistently put in everything you got into it, and you're consistently improving the ways that you live a daily life, you're going to see more success. But if you're just doing the mandatory things, just like going to the mandatory meetings, mandatory workouts, mandatory practices, that's what you're going to get from football. When you start doing that plus doing more, right? I'm not saying like go out and run for 4 hours, but if you're leaving that meeting and then you're still watching film, you're still taking notes, you leave the workout and then you go to another gym and you might do some bicep curls, whatever it may be, that's going to put you more ahead because not everyone's going to be doing those things. And if you look at all the the great athletes that have success, all the stories that you hear, like Kobe Bryant waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and already being in the gym working out for 3 hours before the team gets there, it shows the standard. It shows the success that they've had in their careers, right? So, what I would say is like, if someone else is able to do it and they've done it, why can't you do it as well? Why not you? Right? Instead of saying like, well, I'm not Kobe, I'm not, I'm not LeBron, I'm not Michael Jordan, I'm not Jerry Rice, I'm not Tom Brady, but why not? Why aren't you? Can you be? Maybe. Can you be better? Maybe. You won't know until you put some effort into it, though.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, and as you were sharing, just listening to you, I'm reminded of that Winston Churchill quote that responsibility is the price of greatness, right? You have to be willing to take responsibility, and I would say take ownership of your life and the decisions you make, decisions of what you think about, what actions you take. And I even look at you, Travis, right? Like you think about all this, and we've had these conversations, right? Is you had the ability to go play at the next level, right? You could have been a great, student athlete at the university level. And that just wasn't your journey, right? It was something else. But you came back and you put in the reps and sets to coach. The year after you left high school, like literally every day, you were there beside me. What can I learn? What can I do better? What can I do here to get better? And it was interesting how just that consistency of taking responsibility, putting in the reps and sets created this opportunity for you at Queens, where it's like, again, fact is fact. You didn't have the opportunity to play as a student athlete at the university level. You had no prior experience coaching at the university level, with the exception of helping Coach Snyder out at spring camp at Western. And it's so interesting how, if you would allow all the stories of why you can or why it's not meant for you, or why you don't deserve it to stop you, you wouldn't be where you are. So I think you're a shining example of other people's opinions are none of your concern. That when you truly go all in and bet on yourself, greatness is the byproduct. And it just really reminded me of all the amazing blessings that have come into your life, because you're a living embodiment of the power of this work.
Yeah. No, like I definitely appreciate the kind words and accept those. And it's definitely my story is a little different than most coaches that come in this profession. And I'm grateful that like yourself and Todd McKay had me out coaching at Banton for a while, and then building a relationship with Coach Snyder here, the head coach at Queens, definitely allowed me to get here. And without his creativity and the way that he thinks, the way that he goes around life, I wouldn't have this opportunity. And obviously, he saw something in me that others didn't, right? So it's definitely something that I'm extremely grateful for sure.
Yeah. Okay, brother. So, hey, I got one question for you. I want to be respectful of your time and energy. Again, you've poured a lot of time, energy, and money into learning about your greatest resource, which is yourself. like I've seen, you've blessed me to allow me to be part of this journey over the last few years. So I'm curious, what if someone is, feeling stuck, like they know they want more, but they're just not sure where to get started? Like, what is like a some wisdom you would share? Maybe even think back to where Travi was in 2020, right before he embarked on this journey. Like, what piece of advice would you say in regards to decision making?
We talked about making fast decisions, and the thing that I would say is, when you get an opportunity to improve yourself and to make a committed decision, and it's about a decision that's going to challenge you. Really attack it, really give that a chance, really give that an opportunity, because you don't know what you're going to get out of it until you try it. The minute that you start feeling bad for yourself and you feel like you're doing all the right things, but you're not getting to what you want, or you're not doing things that you want to do, really think about what you could be doing right now that's going to allow you to do those things, and what it's going to take to do it, and make a committed decision to have this focused moment of clarity and really learn about that. And if you need help with that, there's obviously people that can help with that. JT's one of them. I'm always open to have a conversation about anything with people, and I love that. But definitely, make a committed decision right now and then commit to it.
Now, as you say that, right? Like, I love the idea of like committed decision, right? And committed, right? Committed decision, right, comes from the Latin word, right, cadir, which means to cut off. So it's the antithesis of having a plan B, right? Like, you take a look at you moved to Kingston to go coach at Queens. There's no plan B, right? It's just, I'm moving my beautiful family, right? My soon to be born daughter, and I'm just going all in on this next adventure of my life. So that again is a living embodiment of like burning the boats, right? Like, there's no plan B. I'm just going all in on the here and the now. So I'm curious, I know that this definitely struck a chord with someone. I know that there is someone in here that, like, this is exactly what they needed to hear. What is the best way for people to connect with you, whether they have questions about themselves, or maybe it's a student athlete, a parent who's maybe thinking about Queens as a possible next destination? What would be the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, well, there's my Instagram, Travis Dezan, and then my Twitter, Coach Dezan, or you can just search Travis Dezan on either of those platforms, and I'll pop up there someplace. Reach out, sure.
Okay. Well, brother, hey, I want to take a moment to thank you. I first and foremost want to thank you for being open to flipping the script with me and having this conversation. But more importantly, I want to, acknowledge you for the great man you are, the great dad, the great husband, the great son, just the amazing coach and teacher and mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing that really has been the biggest blessing has been able to see you continually step to your next level of greatness. The vision I still have of you is a few years back, where you're standing with me on the sidelines as a grade 9, standing in the rain, paying a price to be out there. You weren't able to practice that day. You're holding sticks, and we're just having a great conversation. And just, we shared a laugh. We shared a joke about both coming from parents that were immigrants, and we just like that connection. It's like amazing, that connection, how it then blossomed into the classroom, and then you being a captain of our football program in high school, and just where we are now. So I just want to thank you for just, again, allowing me to continually be part of your life, brother.
Hey, likewise, you know how I feel, right? So I could definitely appreciate what you do as well, man. And obviously all the great things that you said about me is the same thing as you, man. You've definitely, I'm not me without you. So
Yeah.
definitely grateful, man. Appreciate it.
One last thing before I share a reminder to people. Has the journey been all warm and fuzzy sunshine and rainbows?
Heck no.
Heck no.
It's not always the case, man.
Have there been moments where we've had some love tough conversations where, we've had to put you into some uncomfortable places?
Oh yeah. More than what people would imagine.
But on the other side of that, you found your freedom, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So, folks, Travi dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom in this conversation. And what I always remind you in the huddle is that knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates great results. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations is, if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a teammate, a family member, a loved one, or someone in your life that you feel just needs to hear these empowering messages. The more people we have listening to, understanding, and applying these simple ideas and principles to their life, the more blessed this world will be. And as always, I love having these conversations with you. Have a blessed rest of your day, and I'll chat with you next time in the huddle.